I'd like to call the meeting of the Finance and Auditing Committee and Committee of the Whole for our April 17th to order. Madam Chair, would you please call the roll? Not Madam Chair, Madam Secretary.
You got it. And I'm going to correct it. Today is April 23rd.
Oh. Well, how's that going for you, Barb?
Starting with Director Cochran, who's absent. Devlin?
Here.
Giudice?
Here.
Hernandez is absent. Maston?
Here.
Verdoni?
Here.
Vice Chair Barr?
Present.
Chair Rabbitt's absent. And President Hill?
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum, but you are not still a committee of the whole.
All right, thank you. Item number 4, there are no items under item 4, so we'll move to item 5. Item 5 is to approve actions relative to the Low Carbon Transit Operations Program, and you'll find that on page 39, and Jennifer is here to help us understand it.
Good morning, Chair Parr, members of the Finance Committee. This is item 5. This is a request that we ask for that they always call it LC Top, the LC Top grants. So this is just authorizing us to put in a application. This submission is going to be for the replacement of the MV Mendocino vessel. It just allows the general manager also a little bit. This program is way more complicated than on the day-to-day. I'm thankful that Philip Cami and Jacob Brown over in our capital and grants department handle all this on a day-to-day. But I understand there's a couple changes in this particular our grant application in the past. There's 2 cycles. So it's an extra long report. There's a cycle A and there's a cycle B. And we're requesting just being able to be flexible enough to get whatever the authorization is going to be for cycle A and then a resolution for cycle B. You'll see on pages 40 and 41 just the kind of details of what we're asking for each cycle. There's 2 types, right? There's a population-based set of funds and then there's a revenue-based set of funds. I don't know, Dennis, if you have anything in particular you'd like to say about this particular grant application.
It's a standard grant application. It may be the last time we get to enjoy this much largesse in the program because this is money that comes from the Cap and Invest program. And last year they adopted a change in cap and trade to make it Cap and Invest, and it changed the prioritization for money. And so under the new Cap and Invest, high-speed rail is guaranteed $1 billion a year. CAL FIRE for fire prevention gets money off the top. And the transit money like LC Top is in the 3rd tier. And if there's not enough money, the first tier is guaranteed. The later tiers take a haircut. And last week, the California Air Resources Board proposed some changes that would increase the size of the haircut. The changes affect refinery emissions, and I think they're in response to concerns about affordability and fuel prices right now. But just so we're all cognizant that we should enjoy this opportunity here because future opportunities may be greatly diminished.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Director Manston.
Yeah, since you brought it up, I was reading that looks like they're expecting about half as much in the Cap and Invest program, and recognizing that they're probably going to chop Tier 3 completely. How else might that affect us?
LC Top is how it will affect us principally. Both the state and federal side are looking temporarily grim. So the federal side is similar in terms of the size of the haircut. The top line numbers for the current authorization draft at the House would also cut the bus program nationwide in half. Well, luckily, we just got a grant out of that program. The state federal picture is a little grim right now, but you always got to play the long game. And on the state side, though, the legislature and the governor made some policy choices, and so LC Top may be diminished. We also get a little bit of LC Top for, basically out of the STA TDA allocations from the counties. It's not our biggest pot of money, so if they're going to give us a haircut in any pot of money, I'd rather this than STA or a TDA or some of the other programs we get money from, because this is the smallest amount of money. It's kind of like if they give a haircut to the Federal Highway Ferry Boat Program. we'll be disappointed, but it's much better than if they gave the haircut to the Federal Transit Administration Ferry Boat Program. So, but we'll be working with the CTA on this under the board's legislative platform. I have the authority to sign letters and things that help us get money. And so CTA is marshaling the troops. They've got 2 state senators that are speaking up on this. But I think it'll be a tough one in the legislature and CARB because of the concerns about affordability right now. And so I think CTA will be aligning themselves with the environmental community who does not like to propose changes. But I think, I would not want to bet money one way or the other how it's all going to shake out. Yeah. No, thanks for asking the question. Because, any pot of money hurts us. This is the smallest pot of money we get on the state side.
Any other questions? Any comments? Is there anyone from the public wishing to address it?
We have no speakers on this item.
In that case, may I have a motion? I have a motion from Director Hill and a second.
Second.
From Director Giudice. Would you please call the roll?
Thank you. We're still a committee, so I'm going to be calling on committee members only, starting with Director Cochran, who's absent. Devlin? Giudice?
Yes.
Hernandez is absent. Maston? Berdoni?
Yeah, aye.
Vice Chair Parr?
Yes.
Chair Rabbit is absent, and President Hill. Thank you. It's unanimous with those present.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, the status report of the fiscal year 25-26 budget. It starts on page 49. Give you just a second to find it. Jennifer, I think that's yours again.
All right. This is your monthly status report. If you'll turn to page 51, which is usually the table that I review, going to prime the pump. We've got budget discussions next month. So just kind of as a reminder, if we were not having any one-time SB 125 funding, we would start the year on the budget level on paper being $58 million in the hole per se. With the $34.5 million, we have brought that down to a shortfall starting the year at $23.7 million. And all of your staff and all of your executive team and all across the board, everyone is tightening their belt. So we are right now, because we have that one-time funding, we are looking like we'll have about, if it were to end right now, we'd have $9 million in excess to roll over for next year. We anticipate being in the teens, hopefully, by the time we get to June. And then we'll kind of have a discussion next month when we get to budget about how this rollover will affect what we look like for next year, because we will be starting out with quite a large shortfall.
I might add, some of that $34 million, we kind of paid ourselves back for last year. So if you ignore the payback for last year and look at this year, if we keep doing what we're doing, we'll have a deficit that's a small fraction of that $58 million. It's still, north of $10 million. So it'll be between 10 and 20. But so we are doing a very aggressive job managing costs. If you hear people complain about why don't we run an extra bus or an extra boat here, just say we gladly will if you write us a check. So that's kind of what we're doing, but staff's doing a fabulous job on every little corner of the organization of managing expenses. And, we are seeing slow, steady growth in traffic, which is helping. So those two things combined will make it so that this year the real deficit will be between 10 and 20. If we had no one-time COVID relief money, which kind of gives you a framework for next year.
Any other questions, comments? I have a comment. When is our one-time money on? Is it in our bank?
It's in our bank. And so, that's why it looks the way it does. It's in our bank now, and then we spend it down. Of course, it's for transit. So, of course, you want it early, spend it early, but then that gives us some of our toll funds to do what we need to do. To
follow this year, though. So the one-time COVID relief money will, because we have this carryover year, it'll be later this calendar year that we'll have expensed it all.
Yeah.
Not just expensed it, but also on paper, expended it all.
Yeah.
Is that something that that the Finance Committee puts on their agenda when that happens? I mean, that's fairly significant. We lived on that money for a long time.
Your budget will have a detailed discussion of this. Jennifer's looking forward to having those conversations with you. with a draft budget in front of you, because the draft budget we'll talk about. We'll recommend for one time. Recommend that you adopt a budget with a deficit, with the understanding we need to fix it. We're not going to make that as a long-term recommendation, and we'll have a lot of information that Jennifer and her team has put together that Jennifer will present that talks about why we think on a one-time basis it's okay and may be appropriate, but it's not something we can do long-term. And so we'll continue to do everything we've been doing, tightening her belt. It really is tied into, does this rebound in San Francisco continue? Does it slow down? Does it speed up? Because that'll affect whether, that 1 year worked or not.
Yeah, and as a reminder, this is your operating budget, right? So there's two parts. You've got your operating and our capital plan. And normally we don't spend a whole lot of time talking about our capital expenses and our capital plan. But as you know, John keeps spending all the money. So we have to figure out a way to balance the big infrastructure. I know, that darn bridge. Yeah, I've had some conversations in the last couple of weeks that people are like, I need to replace this. It's past its useful life. And I said, look around. Do you think anything we are vintage here? There's a lot, most of the stuff is past its useful life. We're just trying to make it useful. So we really are trying to be thoughtful on the balance between the capital plan and what we need to do for protecting future generations and just updating things versus also making sure that the operations we don't end up in a deficit on an ongoing basis.
And I personally appreciate having you say those words out loud. I mean, we understand that that's all happening. That's why we trust all of you. But to hear you talk about long-term planning and the fact that we acknowledge the fact that it's going to be a tough year ahead. So thank you. Any questions? Jim?
Yeah. Help me understand section, 5, use of district reserves. So on the far right column, it says estimated operating budget surplus $9 million, et cetera. And then in the left column, it says use of district reserves, the same amount.
It's just showing you where it's just showing you where you're going to transfer it back to, right?
That's what I thought.
I would say we built this quote for COVID, and in COVID, it was it was the opposite. We got to take it, you got to take it from the reserves to even ourselves out. That was kind of what it demonstrates. Now it's showing you that we have money, quote, in the operating section, right, to put back if you're going to have your savings and your checking account balance, basically.
Okay. It looks like it's two different places, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, the point is to, right below line 5 is to have that be 0, whatever that is, and recognize what you might need to do. Right. So that's why it looks good on paper that we have money to give back to the reserves on the operating side. And then below that line, which we've talked about previously, is sometimes the market valuation gains can change wildly. So I always try to tell you that, you're not cashing all that out. But I kind of call it money on paper. So you either making some or losing some on paper, then we'd really be giving 8.6 back right now, just with the losses and the gain balances.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Is there anyone from the public that wishes to address the board on this item?
We have no speakers on this item.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. I saw that Monique came. Monique, welcome. We're sorry you got caught in traffic. Would you like to be next, or do you need a minute to catch your breath? All right, come on up.
Good morning. First and foremost, thank you so much for your patience and flexibility. Very much appreciate the time I get to spend with this board talking about the markets and market sentiments. I want to spend the majority of my time really talking through the implications of the Middle Eastern conflict on market sentiment and how it will flow through the decisions we make with regard to the district's portfolio.
I think we're glad to hear that. Usually we kind of skirt around that and don't mention that.
I think it's important to, really dig a little deeper into what the Fed has to consider. As you know, we have a potential new Fed chairman coming in. Kevin Warsh had his nomination hearing earlier this week, and so do want to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to focus on page 10 of your packet, which is the Treasury yield, and just anchored my comments in how much yields have shifted month over month for the period between February 28th and March 31st. Over this month, as you know, the conflict in Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, has really impacted the markets in a number of ways. Price shocks to oil due to the constrained supply, with the Strait of Hormuz being closed, headlines week to week, vacillating between the problem is solved, the ceasefire agreement has been agreed to never mind, there's still some conflict. Vice President Vance is going to be there negotiating. The negotiations failed. They succeeded. The market is really grappling with how to make sense of, where we're going. And I think we've settled into a sentiment of ignore the headlines, wait for the actual action to match. And that action being free flow of oil and ships through the strait. And so I say that to say that the Fed, when they met, essentially said, we would like to wait and see what's happening. Oil price shocks traditionally have had a short-term impact on headline inflation as costs for gas, production, et cetera, has, really been impacted by higher oil prices. But consistently, the secondary effects of higher oil prices have not really been reflected, meaning that you tend to see gas prices go up and then come back down when supply gets, resolved, but you don't necessarily see it sort of flow through secondary impacts. And so the Fed has really relied on that to say, we are not going to impact our rate policy because of what's going on in Iran. Another thing to note is that, there's nothing the Fed can really do about Iran. And so that has, resulted in the market, really relying on the implication that we're not going to see higher interest rates. We're not even necessarily going to see a cut in interest rates. We expect there to be just a general pause in interest rate policy. And so that large month-over-month change in the 2-year Treasury yield, you could see about 42 basis point increase. That's a result of that idea that we're going to see a pause in the interest rate strategy. Now that brings me to Kevin Warsh, who is Donald Trump's nominee for the Fed. We all know that the president has a bias for lower interest rates and has continued to make comments about that being his desired outcome for a new Fed chair. Kevin Warsh, in his commentary during his nomination hearing, has been the Fed should be independent. He didn't see anything wrong with the president expressing a view, but he believes that the Fed should continue to do what the Fed is doing. Whether or not that actually flows through the actions that he, implements when he's on the board is neither here nor there, but he is saying what the market would like to hear, which is that the Fed should remain independent and the president can say what he wants to say, but the Fed is still going to do what it's going to do. Now, that being said,
we're all trying not to chuckle.
I know. That being said,
and you are so PC. You must have practiced this in the traffic.
I had a lot of time to go over my talking points while I was really trying to get here. But where the market has landed is that we don't expect to see any rate cuts in 2026, perhaps in 2027. But as we know, as I come here month to month to talk about the markets, 4 weeks is a lot of time in this administration, in this environment. So we will see where we are next month. As far as our strategy for the district, Going through to page 15, I do want to highlight that we've really been able to take advantage of the increase in yield in the market and took that as a buying opportunity to buy some very attractive securities. We've continued our strategy of diversifying into more corporate notes, places where we have a lot of confidence in the fundamentals. We've been able to pick up investments with yields north of 4%. Again, just taking advantage of those rate increases in the market. We continue to be very focused on the liquidity needs of the district. We keep your cash flow needs in mind. We work very closely with staff on that, but being able to take advantage of these yield increases has been a boon. And as I say, month to month, we're really focused on, liquidity and safety and paying attention to the market just to make sure we know in general where the winds are blowing. But your strategy is really anchored in the fundamentals. So I'll pause there for questions.
Are there any questions for Monique? I think we're just grateful that you're talking about it. I think it's on all of our minds. And Patty, did you? Oh, you're just grateful. Director Hill?
Yeah. I mean, we live in interesting times. And, the headline volatility, I think the market has gotten to a place where who knows? Nobody knows. The media doesn't know. They're reporting what they get. We find that, the president will say one thing on Truth Social. The headline will say something else. The reality of the situation is very different. And we have to ignore, for the most part, some of the flashier headlines, some of the flashier posts, and just go to fundamentally what is happening with the traffic in the strait, with oil prices, and really just anchor onto that. And I think that's where a lot of economists are going. That's where market research folks are going, just getting back to the actual data. What is the action saying? And we'll continue to watch that and report out.
Well, I think it gives us a little hope that our investment firm knows that there are guardrails and that whatever we can do, we need to stay neutral is the word I want to say, but I'm not sure. I mean, that's basically what I heard you say.
Yes.
So we appreciate that.
Thank you. And again, I appreciate the flexibility and patience of the board this morning.
Any other questions for Monique? Thank you so much. And I think Jennifer gets to come back. We skipped over her. We were so anxious to hear about what was happening.
Again, I want to thank Monique. It is a little unpredictable on the Richmond Bridge, I guess, today. So we appreciate her coming all the way over here, giving us the briefing. It's always important, at least, to hear where we've been. I am not sure on that item whether we need to close up item 3 for approval.
I think we need to just make sure the committee doesn't have anything else that they want to say about it and see if there's any public comment on that.
We have no public comment on this item.
All right. In that case, we could use a motion for this item.
So moved.
All right. I have a motion and a second.
Got it.
Would you call a roll, please?
Thank you. That's item number 3 with a first and second, starting with Director Cochran, who's absent. Devlin? Aye. Giudice?
Yes.
Hernandez is absent. Maston? Aye. Verdoni?
Aye.
Vice Chair Parr?
Aye.
Chair Rabbitt's absent. And President Hill?
Yes.
Thank you. That's unanimous with those present.
Right. Thank you. Jennifer, you can't leave.
Nope.
Item number 7. Yeah. Monthly review of the Golden Gate Bridge traffic tolls and bus and ferry transit patronage fares for 9 months ending March 2026. And it begins on page 59.
Yep. Given that we are now this will be January through March, so I'll usually on the quarterlies, I'll take a little time just to walk through. I do have a couple comments on these items, so I'm not going to blow by them too fast unless somebody's too much in a hurry. But if on item number 7, you turn to page 61. As you know, this is I always refer to this every month. I think it gives a great snapshot of what's happening in our bridge, bus, and ferry as it relates to ridership and revenues. As we talked earlier in another item, all the modes are up. So the good news is both ridership, traffic, and all the revenues are trending upwards, both from last year as well as what we intended on budget. So as we talked on the budget status report, we're looking good because if you look at just the revenue column, each one of the modes we were anticipating to be a little bit lower than they were from this year-to-date budget, and they're beating all those markers. So if I were kind of doing our performance review, we are performing well on the revenues. I do want to make one note. So when we do traffic counts and ridership counts, right now, a lot of you know on ferry, there's a Coast Guard requirement. So we actually have somebody who physically counts because, as I say, we need to know if something happens, unfortunately, in the water, how many bodies are we looking for? So that is a requirement. And what that does is it separates it out from any of the what I'll call revenue numbers that come in electronically, right? Right now, in the old days, right, those of you that have been here, Betty Jo would be literally counting from the vault how much was in the bank slip that we would put on here. And years ago, we agreed to that reporting out on a program should be separate than what goes on in the bank. So if you're settling cash in the bank, doesn't mean it's when it happened. In the old days, it actually was when it happened. You pulled off the fare box, you counted it, you had the toll collectors come in, you counted it. Now there could be different, we call settlement days. There could be different timing to when that cash is related to the ridership. And we kind of grew up in the system and was like, well, the electronic count gives it to us. So we'll just pull the electronic count along with the bank statement and it should all match. We separated that out in ferry, which is good because I started finding out certain programs that maybe were shifting our average fare and our revenues. And in bridge, we actually have an independent traffic counter because I keep saying transactions are not traffic. So for instance, all the cars that come through, we were counting transponders in a sense and license plates. But when it goes out of the customer service center, sometimes if you don't have your transponder, it doesn't go off. It's counting your license plate and sometimes also your transponder, and that all gets kind of resolved down at the customer service center. So we really want a good traffic count. So we actually have a way to count that rather than tying it to like a transaction or the bank. So our bridge, we're pretty confident those numbers are going well. So we get to bus, and the bus ridership is always been steady. It's been steady forever. People get on, people get off. We feel like when we had Clipper, we started to notice in November, December that the ridership, and I think I said this last month, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I either have other people's money or I don't know what's going on with people. And we are finding, we're drilling down, and I'll probably come back next month with a proposal possibly to change how we do ridership in bus. But we are, in my opinion, definitely undercounting, which I guess is good, on ridership. And all of that really is triggered from our Clipper 2.0 transition. It's not a hot mess, but it is is just working out the reporting. So I believe we have some reporting issues where we're used to just getting the electronic data and taking that. Not to get too technical. Too bad Director Moulton Peters isn't here. She likes to nerd out with me on the Clipper system. The electronic, the way we are in an account-based system, now we've got transactions and you have to weed out what a transaction is versus a ridership. All that to say is we also have, I think it's okay. We have automatic passenger counters on the bus. So we kind of balance that out. And I asked planning, so big thank you to David Davenport. He had to pull out what goes on in the automatic passenger counters. They are automatic. And I started seeing the gap between December and January. We generally have a gap of so as I say, the automatic passenger counter counts everybody that goes through the laser beam coming on and off. And as we know, Dennis always says the drivers have to stop, have a break, have to go to the bathroom. So those are at least pretty consistent unless there's some sort of emergency that's happening with the driver. You don't expect to see that change too much. So the quote, as the planners would say, the rate of shift between what APCs are and what our ridership is. They take about right now 4.85% off the top. But if I just look at raw data, we generally have an 8 or 9% gap between ridership and our APCs. And that was happening all the way up until November. And then starting especially in January, which was our first month of the Clipper 2.0, there's a gap of 17. Now there's a gap of 23. And now there's a gap of 28. So I don't think we're not missing people. I think it's just a reporting issue. So all that to just report out, I'm probably going to have to relook at how ridership is. The good news is, I guess it's counting too low. So I noticed that the average fare looked quite high. So I had to start sleuthing around a little bit and asking folks, like, you mean to tell me everyone's paying an extra $1? So we're trying to fix the data piece. So
Jennifer, I have to interrupt you for just 2 seconds to tell you how impressive it is, how deep you all dig into the numbers to make sure that everything's accurate. I mean, who would have thought? Anyway, thank you.
The bottom line is the bridge numbers are good, ferry numbers are good, bus numbers are highly suspect right now since Clipper 2.0 was rolled out, and we don't trust them, and we think we're carrying more passengers than it's being reported. So in this report, Jennifer's team will come up in a month or two with an update that goes back several months to correct the numbers, working with planning and bus operations.
And we thank you for that. I didn't need to cut you off.
Not at all.
While you were on a roll, I needed to tell you that.
I was kind of just, excited that I figured out where I think the suspect part is, and that my gut just kept telling me, like, these don't look right for the last couple of months. So staff is working hard I think we know what the problem is, and of course we'll be working with the Clipper team over at MTC to see if we can get the reporting straightened out.
Thank you.
Any potential issues with the next coordinated claim?
It does not affect the coordinated claim because there's a 2-year time lag. So a great question, though. So that's why we have to go back and fix it, though, because if we're under reporting, we want to make sure that when it comes time for our planning staff to submit data to the National Transit Database, that we have the correct numbers, because it affects 2 years from now how much money we get. So, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Hence Jennifer's, prime focus on this. It's money.
It's money.
So these numbers affect, our understanding of our business, but also they affect what money comes in the door from others.
How far back can you go?
I think we'll go back. We're not seeing too much of a change, but I think I'm going to go back to July just to clean it all up. And so we'll just revise it and have the ridership be consistent and cleaned up and ready for NTD.
Are there any questions or other questions or comments? I don't think that requires a vote, does it? All right, just a discussion. Is there any comment from the public?
We have no public comments on this.
Right, thank you. Jennifer, I think you're next.
Yep. So 8B, this is our review of the capital budget and its expenditures. If you turn to page 79, you will see.
Don't forget 8A.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have 8A? I have it 8A. Did I miss 8A? Oh, the cash flow part, right, as I call it, which I shouldn't say. Okay. Didn't staple them right. All right, 8A, sorry. This is our monthly financial statements for 9 months. As you can see on page 67, let's start on page 67. This is our revenue over expenses. As I say, this is the kind of the yin and yang to the monthly budget status report. So this gives you a snapshot of what's happening year to date in the general ledger. It's, pretty much where the revenues and expenses we anticipate it to be. I don't really have too many comments other than right now we have more revenues and expenses, and that's what I want to see, because we have 22 million over. But that, again, it's when we get the revenue, and some of that's quarterly, different timing on when the revenue comes in. So we expect that to start evening out and going down as we get toward the end of the year. Happy to answer any questions on 8A.
Any questions for Jennifer on 8A? Right.
All right. 8B. 8B is our capital budget and expenses. And if you turn to page 79 on this, again, when people look at percentages, they get concerned when things are over 100%. But in this case, what it means is that we thought something was going to happen in the budget. And again, John has been moving with his team on seismic, so we're spending a lot of money in this fiscal year that we hadn't anticipated when we did this last March. As you know, last March, a lot of things between March of 25 and March of 26, a lot of changes, and we're able to kind of get the seismic project off and running. I think that's the most significant amount. We have gotten our reimbursement for our first two big seismic payments. We are paying the contractor the third payment, which is what we say is the biggest. There are three big chunks in the 20 million range. After this one, and once we get that reimbursement back, too bad Monique had to leave, but that's when we've been kind of setting money aside, cash flow, just to make sure that we had enough coming in and out. It'll significantly drop. We expect, $2 million, $3 million in payments after that. So after the mobilization of seismic and kind of the mobilization of that contract and those upfront costs are spent, we're going to put some more money back in to make sure we can get our investments back on track with PFM. So I'm hoping also to surf that market as well and take advantage of that. So I've got to give PFM some more capital money to work with until we're ready to use it. Happy to answer any questions on this.
Any questions for Jennifer on this item? Any public comment?
No public comment on this.
Hearing none, let's move on to item 9, review of the district's fiscal year 25-26 third quarterly report of judgments or settled claims, and Kelly Vitale has been waiting patiently in the back. Welcome, Kelly.
How are you? Okay, we come with a full list today. This is for the third quarterly report of settlements. It covers all settlements, Workers' Comp, Jones Act, and civil. And so it's a third quarter, but the first calendar quarter, and it includes 20 separate claims, 17 settlements. 7 were Workers' Comp, 1 was a Jones Act, and 9 were in the civil arena. The Workers' Comp claims included 2 complete CNRs, 3 stipulated awards, 2 CNRs, that's a compromise and release, with open medical, and the 1 Jones Act was a full release. And on the civil side, we had 6 claims that involved auto and property damage, 2 that were auto and body, and 1 personal injury. So I'm open to questions if you have any.
Are there any questions for Kelly? I'd like to make a comment. I used to be involved in workers' comp in my other job, and Kelly comes here and gives us numbers and tells us there's a this and a that. About how much time do you spend on each of the claims? I mean,
here's a typical lawyerly
yes
explanation. It depends.
Give us a range. Kim says that's the right answer, by the way.
Okay. So what drives the settlement is actually the age of the claim. So they're not like wine. They don't get better because think about it, like your body, right? Typically as you age, right, you start noticing more aches and pains. And so with somebody's injured and then they age, everything gets worse, right? And then we end up paying for that. So I'll see you next month with one that I've been working on for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so what's happening, and I think that I explained this last month, but it's a great reminder. So I had to change the strategy a little bit, the way we're settling claims, because so when I bring a claim through and it's been 3 years and this person is now 67, 72, my strategy has to change. So I'm not just going to settle everything because when they're at that age, so Medicare rules changed. So any settlement of anybody that is on Medicare or 30 months within collecting Medicare, we have to consider Medicare's interests. So that means I have to get an allocation report. So we have a vendor that looks at all the records and looks at the demographics and says, okay, this person's future needs for these injuries is going to be X, Y, and Z. So then part of that settlement, we have to set aside X, Y, and Z. And that person has to use that money for the treatment for those body parts before Medicare will even begin to pay for those body parts. Does that make sense? So if they say it's $25,000 and it's for their back, they have to use up all that $25,000 before they can even submit a claim to Medicare. So when I'm looking at that, as the district and fiduciary of the district's money, would I come to you and say, hey, this person is 68, and they want $300,000 for the allocation, plus they want $180,000 for their permanent impairment. No way. I'm going to bet on their life expectancy. And I know that sounds morbid, but I have a job to do, right?
I think we hire you to do that.
Right. So I'm going to set aside that money for that allocation. I'm just going to keep it in the district self-insured account that we pay on our claims. And I'm going to bet that you're not going to use it before you leave the
Before you don't need it.
Right. And so that's why you'll see more of, I'll settle the components of the claim that could be contested. So the injury, the date of injury, the amount we paid in disability, I'll settle all of that, but I'll leave the medical open. And what else happens is often these folks move away, they don't use treatment. And so that money that they wanted me to come to you and ask to just write a check is still sitting in the self-insured bank account, right? Because it only gets used when they go to the doctor. So my strategy had to change because the demographics of our open claims are getting older, right? So now I'm not closing everything out on as many because I just have to be more responsible with the district's money.
Well, thank you for being so careful and for sharing that with us. I think sometimes it's important to hear what happens underneath the items that we get.
It's a great point. So I just had a stewardship report created because the TPA that manages our workers' comp claims it's up for RFP. And so typically they were sending me a stewardship report, but it was just too much information. So I asked them if they could just really dumb it down and give me the stuff that I like. And so I was going to ask Dennis and Justine if when I bring the RFP to you all in June for approval, I'd love an opportunity to just share those numbers with you over the last 10 years to just show you what our claims have done. Real simple, not 15-page PowerPoint, but just a couple pages and I had them break it down per division and then as a district as a whole. And we did 10 years because that's a really good look. We've had program changes and things. So I'll discuss that with Dennis, but I think that would be a great way for you guys to see
that would
what
be interesting
happened
for us to see.
Okay.
So, all right. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I don't think there's any action needed on this one. Is there any public comment?
We have no public comment on this item.
All right. In that case, thank you very much, Kelly. Thank you for sitting through the rest of the meeting. And Jennifer, you're up again for item number 10. Review of the Auditor Controller's Fiscal Year 25-26 Third Quarterly Report on Authorized Budget Adjustments and Budget Transfers under the General Manager's Authority, and it begins on page 87-ish. I always tell them a number, and you always have a
Yes, I was going to say,
I'll let you tell them the end of it.
We're having a sharing kind of day today, right? So on
It's your meeting, I think, today.
This is our quarterly on the capital projects. If you turn to page 88, and
there you go. See,
if you see these quarterlies, and I will say I was trained by the best. So Director Cochran is not here, so I'm going to answer the question he would be asking me.
Good.
And unless Director Maston stepped out, so he would normally ask me too. So I will go ahead and pretend that I can hear Jerry right now saying to me, explain this to me, what is happening? Because I asked the same question. If you look at like the second quarter, you'll see a negative $2.3 million. It seems kind of odd when you're talking about budget transfers and a capital project. So I asked my team, I said, well, you don't normally see negatives. What's happening here? And really just the explanation is we increased the project at one point. We increased the total project. And as a result of this particular project, which happens to be seismic, the grant funding didn't change, but the ratio shifts. So in a sense, really what happens is the expected, quote, revenue decreases just because of the lower grant share. It just means that it just gets transferred from the district share. This is like a grant district proportion rather than a more or less something in the project that's happening, because it's really just transferring it back to the district share because you increased it and I can't change the grant share on that. So hopefully that explains the question that nobody asked that somebody would possibly be asking. Other than that, happy to answer any other questions I might be able to do if there are any on this quarterly report.
Are there any questions for Jennifer on this particular report? If not, is there any public comment?
We have no speakers on this item.
All right. Thank you. That concludes that item. There's no vote necessary. The item number 11, review of the auditor controller's fiscal year 25-26 third quarterly report on procurement actions and agreements under the general manager's authority. It's on page 91, your report. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Again, another quarterly report for procurement and the general manager's authority. I really don't have any particular comments. As you guys see this every quarter, it really just makes sure it's transparent that you see what we are doing under the general manager's authority and any changes on some of the significant procurements that normally would either be talked about in the general manager report, but nothing significant of note unless somebody has a question on a particular item here.
Are there any questions for Jennifer on this report? Any public comment?
We have no public comment.
All right, that concludes that item then. Is there any just general public comment?
We have no speakers for
Anything on this? All right, on this committee. With that, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. The meeting is adjourned at 10:15.